Good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Towsley. I'm here to talk to you about my research paper, which is on organizational change. And organizational change is a subject that you might say near and dear to my heart because pretty much my entire adult life, while I've been in the military, I've been in organizations that have been trying to change in one way or another. I think that's a large part due to the fact that we're in a very technological age these days, and there's just a lot of technology that everyone's trying to catch up on, and that means new processes and new ways of doing things. And it means out with the old and in with the new. And this is these are trying times. And I don't think this is unique to just the military. I think this is something that pretty much every organization in the world has to face is a change, and change especially because of the technology that's being forced upon us. So just to give you kind of an overview of what my paper was about, if you look at my PowerPoint presentation here, on slide 2 you can see I'm just sort of going to give you my argument that I gave for what I think is necessary for effective organizational change, and I follow that up with just with the process model, which I think is kind of the foundation of all types of change. And then I'll talk about types of what type of leadership is necessary for organizational change, and then talk a little bit about organizational momentum and inertia. So to begin with, slide 3 now, you see my argument here, which is that effective organizational change management requires ethical and transparent leaders who can overcome the organizational inertia that resists change, and therefore create a culture of continuous change and improvement. Um, so I think there's a couple really important things about this. The first is the ethical and transparent leaders, and then the fact that there is always going to be organizational inertia uh, that is going to resist change at first, especially if there hasn't been a lot of change recently in the organization. Um, so just kind of keep those in the back of your mind as we go on to the the rest of this. So the process model, just kind of give you a basic background on Lewin's process model. Lewin's process model is one of the first models to talk about like how do organizations actually change, and it says that well, there's basically three steps, and these three steps are unfreezing, moving, and then refreezing. So the first step is you gotta unfreeze your old ways and say the old ways are no more. We're changing, and that can take a little while. Sometimes that can be you might say the hardest step. And then of course you got to move, you got to or change. You actually have to do the change, and finally you have to refreeze. Um, and that means the changes that you made, you got to like solidify them. And I think it's especially important to like remember that after you've made change, you've got to follow through on this refreezing and make sure that this really kind of sticks and becomes a new status quo. Um, so that's just kind of like the basic background for pretty much everything that happens in organizations change. So if you go on to the next slide here on leadership, um, we're come back to ethical and transparent leadership, and quite frankly, it's really the foundation of how effective organizational change, because people are going to be skeptical. Um, I think skeptical people are necessarily skeptical of change, and I think it's okay. But if leaders demonstrate good ethics uh, and transparency throughout, then it's going to overcome people's skepticism, because people are going to be suspicious that, like, hey, maybe the leaders are making these changes for some reason that's not for the best interest of the company and the employees. Maybe it's just for the best interest of the leaders. And, the leaders facing a challenge throughout all this to secure buy in from those people. And if you can't you need to be transparent to show people that you are being ethical. I think is pretty much like the core of it. Um, if you're ethical, but like nobody knows what you're doing, then it's not really going to help anything. Um, So you need to be transparent about what you're doing and make a real point about that too. Um, because there's going to be a lot of strain on leaders. You can see a few quotes from my paper here that since there's people know there's a lot of strain on you, there's going to potentially be you know there's real danger of compromising your moral principles, which was really going to affect subordinates' perceptions of your commitment. Um, and employees are going to really look for to see, is this new way like really the good way or not? And they're probably not going to give you the benefit of the doubt too. So um, leaders need to be really active about what they do here and intentional. And finally, it's also worth noting that the more you include your subordinates in this change process through what we might call participative leadership, is actually going to um, help them see why the change is necessary, and it's going to help them buy into what's going on. They're going to buy into your vision. They're going to buy into your reason for needing this change because it helps them feel this shared responsibility for your vision of the future once they really see why it needs to be done. So let's go on to our last slide here on organizational inertia. So organizational inertia is just the idea that, kind of like, what is it, Newton's first law, the things at rest tend to stay at rest unless they're acted on by a force, right? Um, if, it's been a while, but I think it goes something like that. If organization, you might say their culture, like their way of doing things is kind of at rest and it's been that way for a long time, then unless, some outside force comes along, like, hello, you, the leader, um, you know, um, there, nothing's going to change. So, I mean, once you get like them moving and you get some momentum going, then things change can start to happen more quickly. But you need to be prepared to just recognize that just because you walk in there and just proclaim that like we're having change doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. Um, I think is really you'll see one other things I put here. This first bullet that the very things that make an organization stable and reliable are the same things that make it resistant to change. So you just kind of have to recognize that, like, um, the things that make your organization, um, like probably a good organization, are it um, are going to make it a little bit resistant to change because you've got these patterns of behavior that have been working for a while. Um, so and So really what that comes down to is just creating a culture in your company where like change is continuous, improvement is just always happening. And you can have like a status quo and you can have like ways of doing things, but it just needs to be acceptable to, always be looking for improvement and always looking for change. And that way you can kind of get the like this ball rolling, this organizational momentum and that can really improve your organization by just kind of having it be on a path of improvement. So in summary, those are the main takeaways from my paper. That if you have ethical, transparent leadership who's willing to overcome this initial organizational inertia and establish this culture of improvement, then that's really the way forward if you want to see organizational change. So that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much for watching.